You're not coming into the school every now and then and saying, oh, you should brush your teeth. Here's a nice, toothbrush and that. It's daily, 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 daily. So you're actually putting a different way of thinking about it. It's a way that actually improves dental health over the life course because you're teaching skills. More importantly, it's at the moment probably the only thing that's been shown to decrease inequalities in dental health, which is what they argue water fluoridation does, but there's no evidence to support it. So things like Child Smile or Design to Smile, which is the Welsh scheme. And why are they important? Well, Scotland won't do water fluoridation. It's been quite clear that it's not on their agenda. At the moment in Wales, despite pressure, the Welsh government has said it's not on their agenda. So, these are really important things, and we need to be arguing that they're done in the city. I know, I'm engaged with them with this, that one of the things Hampshire asked for was the oral health strategy, I think, of the local NHS in the city, and they couldn't produce one. I mean, there is not a consistent way of dealing with oral health in the city. It is something with the city council now in control. I think we have the opportunity to start actually campaigning things that should be done and to be done well. And just to give you an example, the money that the SHA has spent so far on what's been going on, it's probably about £750,000. There is a scheme in Northamptonshire, so actually a slightly more population, which costs £44,000 a year and has been quite effective. Now, how many years could we got that kind of thing for 750,000? Well, a lot is the answer. So, we're wasting money and not dealing with the problem. And I think we've got to, as an organisation and as a campaign, kind of do things like promoting what can be done as community education and working together. The important thing is it's got to be done before children hit school age. So what can you do? What can you do? Well, you can write to your councillors, because you write to your councillor, say, make sure you stay against water fluoridation, particularly if you have a Labour councillor, and why don't you do something that actually will address oral health in the city, rather than just thinking that water fluoridation will come in and solve the problem, because it won't. You can write to your MP and say, this is a monumental waste of money. Why are you letting the NHS spend all this money on putting a scheme in when my local authority is opposed to it, and when it gets powers is committed to stopping it? Surely that's a waste of money. What are you doing as an MP to kind of make sure this doesn't happen? Okay, so that's something else. And as I said, we can write to MEPs to get the EU to actually implement its own directives so that they actually apply. So these are all things that you can do. And we've got information about MEPs, your local councillors and things, you just get on to them. It's really, really important. It's still important now as it was as always. And back our postcard campaign. So, this is it. This is the postcard. You have a choice of two. This is the I do not consent to being medicated. I mean, we can't have ideas of referendums and votes on this. This is about medication. So please, 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 send another postcard in, give them to your friends. This is still important that the SHA knows that we haven't gone away. I think really, really important. I think it's fair to say as well that, all eyes are still on Southampton. And I think that can be seen in two ways. I mean, one is all eyes are on Southampton because I actually think the Department of Health is looking at the Southampton and thinking, we've got to get this in, this is our pet policy, we've got to push the SHA and make sure they get this in. But all eyes are also on Southampton because I think, if it happens in Southampton, it will kind of open up a bit of a floodgate across the country, which is, clearly not what we want to see. If we stop it in Southampton, it will make a huge impact on making a break with what is essentially this very kind of old, outdated, ineffective, outmoded policy that was first introduced 60-odd years ago, but has actually had its day. It's not something we want to see now. And other local councils are being pressured by public health and dental people saying, oh, you should put water, fluoride in the water, that will solve all the problems. Kind of just dismissing all the kind of evidence and all the kind of outrage that was being about this. I mean, because we know, that it's medication without consent. There is no doubt, I mean, people talk about it, even those who say they support water fluoridation talk about it as a medicine. Whether it's Nick Clegg and letters to us saying, this is medication, or the way that it's talked about by people, that it's actually there to prevent dental disease. I mean, if it prevents dental disease, that makes it a medicine. A judge back in '63 in a Scottish case said it's a medicine. It meets all the conditions that are laid down in law about what a medicine is. I mean, if you look at the EU directives, it would also meet all the conditions of what it is to be a medicine. It's not supported by any good evidence. There is no real good evidence. We know that from the York, the first kind of major review in the UK in 2000. We know that from reviews by the National Research Council in the US. And we now know it by the most recent review by the European Union Scientific Committee. You will note, though, if you look at anything to do with the SHA or the NHS, that they don't refer to things that don't agree with them. It's a kind of, oh well, we'll use evidence if it agrees with what we think. And if it isn't agreeing with what we think, we don't use it. I mean, it is literally as simple as that. It is dismissed. But the point is, the evidence is not there to support its effectiveness. It doesn't reduce inequalities. If you go to West Midlands, there are still inequalities in dental health, which are as wide as they are in anywhere where there isn't water fluoridation. So it doesn't actually do what they say it should do. It does mean that babies and children, in fact some adults, will exceed recommended daily levels of fluoride intake. This is absolutely clear. This is, so clear that you can't really ignore it. The European Union reckon that it's 0.8 parts per million. You will get babies and young children exceeding their daily amounts. Well, that's less than what the local NHS want to put into our water. So, and in fact, they also argue that there's actually no level at which you can be sure that there will be no excess, really, apart from virtually none at all. So, this is really important, that actually it does mean that we're going to, and, we will have an epidemic of dental fluorosis, which is the first indicator. We also know that it's unethical. How can you, when you know there are known harms, that people can't avoid it, that you have no choice? How can you do this with such a weak evidence base? It is totally unethical. And I'm really pleased to see a kind of a major ethics journal kind of taking on this kind of debate. And of course what we all know is that it's unwanted as well. I mean, it's as simple as that. Why should we have fluoride put in our water? So, finally though, what I'd like to do is to thank you on behalf of Hampshire Against Fluoridation for the support that those of you have given to the campaign, because there's no point having a campaign if people don't support it and don't drive it forward. I'd also like to thank HAF committee members, and that's the other reason for kind of having a bit of a reflective. I've just been given or appointed to a new job as Professor of Health Policy at the University of Kent. And so we'll be moving and working in Canterbury. And because of that, I'm standing down at this AGM as chair of Hampshire Against Fluoridation. And I kind of want to look back. It's been great. In some ways, I've been involved since 2005 because I was a primary care trust board member when this first came to board for discussion. So it's kind of been a long time, and it's a campaign which I've been involved in amongst many others. And I thought, as I kind of give up, I've been chair, took over from John in 2010. It was a good point at which to kind of think about, well, what have we done? Where have we got to? And I think we've got a long way. And my sense is that we have been successful as a campaign. And I say we very generally because I think we have. We've brought on and worked with local politicians to a point where we've been able to change what's been happening in the City Council. We're engaging much more with local. I was very pleased that Adrian is here and David's here. We've been working with some of the local MPs, so Julian Lewis has been a very strong supporter and came and talked to us in March. You know, and we've built up very good relationships, and also relationships with not just kind of individuals, but with over the last couple of years with the County Council and some of the officers there. And that's sustained the campaign. We've built up links with other areas. We've built up links with international groups as well in terms of the Fluoride Action Network. And I think that's what helps and sustains the campaign. And lots of people do different things and work at different levels. You know, without Bill, nobody would know anything was going on, and you know, it's great. And now we get Bill to film things as well. Then I think he stays up all night trying to load them on the website. But, you know, so, and what people do, people helping with refreshments, kind of going out, but people who've been out in the past, back in 2009 and again last year, collecting signatures. These are all important tasks which have driven this campaign forward. It's made it more visible, it's brought people into it. It's a bigger campaign than it was back in 2008. And that's what you've done. And that's been great. And it's been an absolute pleasure. You know, I really say that, absolute pleasure working with people on this. But I'm not dropping out. And Anna's not dropping out. We've got a new job, but we're going to stay involved. My son will still be living in the city, and we'll still have a link with the city, and we'll still be involved in what we might do next. And I think it's kind of think about what we can do next. And if the SHA is still hell-bent on going forward, we need to start thinking about how we can kind of start to, in a sense, up the argument to get them to stop this particular process. Because it's a waste of money. It's just absolutely kind of unbelievable that they should be pushing this through with only 10 months of life left. And really in the face of evidence. And just one of the things on their website, another thing they said, when it looked at the justification of what it should be doing, it goes back to a 1995 kind of reference or journal article. Kind of ignores, you know, things that have been happening even in the last 10 or 12 years. I mean, this is just absurd. So it's, you know, I'd like to thank you all, and particularly to have committee members for being so supportive. But it's kind of farewell but not goodbye, is what I'm saying. Break it open a bit, but I'm very pleased that David has agreed to kind of come with a more political slant on things and talk about what's been going on, particularly with Hampshire and things as well. So, David, thank you.
Have a drop of this while it's still safe to do so, I think. As you can probably imagine, being a bit of a Liberal Democrat or aspiring Liberal Democrat politician, every day is a bit of a challenge, but there's no greater challenge than trying to follow a speech like we had from Stephen, who is not just a master of his subject, but a very, very good, clear and articulate speaker. And it says volumes for your commitment that you're prepared to give up a lovely sunny Saturday afternoon to listen to me. The reason I think I've been asked to speak to you today is to give you a little bit of flavour about the way things have happened from a Hampshire County Councillor perspective. I should make it absolutely clear from the start that I am not talking as though I represent the formal position of Hampshire County Council. I am an opposition member, and the administration that runs Hampshire County Council is still a Conservative one. I've taken up this issue on fluoride for really 3 reasons. I am a member, as Stephen's mentioned, of the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So the good of the health of the people of Hampshire is something I'm very much concerned with. I'm a member for Totton South and Marchwood, and in the patch that I look after, if these proposals go ahead, it means that about 8,000 households in my area will be directly affected. And finally, as a Liberal Democrat, it offends my fundamental political views that an unelected, unaccountable body, Aquango, the Strategic Health Authority, thinks that it can force these measures upon us without the consent of the people. I've supported Hampshire Against Fluoride in fighting this threat from the early days. I've attended meetings, I've organised petitions in my area, I went to the rally in London, I've penned letters and a few in my views in the Daily Echo, and I feature it regularly in my leafleting campaigns, and I get a lot of feedback from people, and it's obvious to me that this is something a lot of people do care very much about. And I've also done quite a lot of behind-the-scenes lobbying. One of the advantages is now we've got a few Liberal Democrats in national government, and I have the ear of some of the politicians who are actually running things nationally, and I'm pushing behind the scenes, and sometimes it's behind the scenes that makes the most difference. Now, I think an important thing to remember is that these particular proposals were seen as a bit of a test, insofar as if the South Central Strategic Health Authority were successful at implementing their proposals locally, I think the big fear that we all shared is that this would happen elsewhere in the UK. And I was interested that quite separately Stephen had a slide up there which said something like the eyes of the nation are upon us. And I think that's true. I think other strategic health authorities would certainly be looking at us, and they would have seen the amount of resistance that has come in reflection of these proposals. And I would like to think that as a result of that, we probably won an important national battle. What I think I can say on this day, the 26th of May 2012, is that we will not very likely see attempts made to impose fluoride on unwilling populations elsewhere in the UK. This is partly because the present government has decided that such things should not be decided upon, or things should be decided upon by elected councillors. And they've even decided to abolish strategic health authorities. And of course it's also because of the excellent fight put up by Hampshire Against Fluoride, public opinion and elected councillors and MPs who've combined, I think, extremely well cross-party to oppose these proposals. Now from next April, Hampshire County Council will have a Health and Wellbeing Board rather than a Health Overview Scrutiny Committee. The decision about fluoride in tap water will rest with elected councillors, not the SHA. I can't predict what a future council might do, or whether indeed I will be successfully elected to it with absolute certainty, but it does look unlikely that Hampshire County Council would support such plans. I would say the same is probably true of Southampton City Council and New Forest District Council, though there may be others here who know better than myself. So to summarise the situation as I understand it, public opinion seems not to have shifted towards adding fluoride to tap water, probably the reverse. Hampshire Against Fluoride view is still generally supported by local councils. Southern Water don't seem at all keen on going ahead with it. I'm not aware of any significant advances in the technical measures that will be needed to implement such a scheme, such as planning permissions for dosing stations. I've also heard rumour that some of the money paid over from central government to the Strategic Health Authority to implement it has been taken back. There are increasing doubts about the legitimacy of the consultation, and there's also the geography aspect. Some homes likely to be impacted were not consulted at all. Stephen mentioned a complaint to the Parliamentary and Health Ombudsman, and I've got to tell you I've done the same as Stephen with Julian Lewis, that we also had a complaint about the consultation. How could you have a fair, objective consultation when the body is at the same time telling you how good it is to fluoridate your water? It was a nonsense from the outset, and we need a ruling on this. So now that the legal challenge is over, I again have, with Julian Lewis, reinstated the complaint, and we'll see where that goes. Given time is now fast running out, it does seem increasingly unlikely to me that the SHA still has the will to carry on with these proposals, or indeed the technical and financial capacity. In my view, the Secretary of State for Health could step in and direct the SHA to put the brakes on now. With my encouragement, Dr. Lewis did specifically ask the Minister to do this, but has been politely rebuffed, I think, because the current government are keen to be seen not to be interfering in what they see as local decision making. So, whether things have happened behind the scenes, I cannot know, but I certainly hope so. And I think the wider UK battle has probably been won. I'm not able to predict exactly what will happen with regard to the local situation, but as each day passes, I'm becoming increasingly confident that our tap water will remain free of this industrial waste product.
Adrian is here, and as his group put the motion forward, I don't know whether you just want to say a few words where you think the council is at the moment.
Thank you, Tim. I'll be very brief, not least because I think there is pretty little to add to your masterly presentation, I think. I would wish to take this opportunity of congratulating you and your colleagues on the way this campaign has been run, how far you have come, how far you've succeeded in changing the climate of opinion, even among some of those who may be mildly persuaded by the arguments for such benefits as have been claimed for fluoridation. I think the mood has changed. I was certainly very proud to be the mover of the motion that changed Southampton City Council's position on this matter, and of course on the occasion of your 6,000 vote petition. I did so because I believe that this measure is undemocratic, is unethical, and is unscientific, as Steve has indicated in considerable detail on this and on other occasions. I have to say, moving that motion was not popular with the leadership of either of the other political groups, who, though the majority of members across the political spectrum supported it, I think their leaderships would have preferred to keep the issue off the agenda, at the very least until they had definitive powers. However, we used our constitutional right, we pressed ahead, and we gained a significant majority on the then council to change its position from support for the Strategic Health Authority's plans to opposition. And that remains Southampton City Council's position at this moment. However, we have, of course, as you all know, just had local elections, which involved a significant shift in the composition of the council and a new administration. Sadly, when we held our debate on our motion, the majority of the group that now leads the council voted to continue support for the Strategic Health Authority's plans. Some of their members voted against, but a minority. Not only is there a new administration whose position is unclear, as Steve has outlined, there's been some talk of a referendum. I agree absolutely with him, but in current circumstances, that seems entirely superfluous. We know and have good grounds for showing that we know what the outcome of such a referendum would be, and it would be in favour of the position you and I support. There are, however, also a significant number of new councillors, both predominantly, of course, new Labour councillors, but also a couple of new Conservative councillors. They have not had, throughout the education of this matter, but those who were on the council in the earlier stages of this process received. They haven't had the briefings, they haven't heard the debates unless they personally involve themselves. So I think one of the things that is important that your campaign does, and does as a matter of some urgency, is ensure that all those new councillors receive as much information and as much briefing on the reasons for which you oppose fluoridation as you can get to them. I've no reason to believe that there is any proposal in the offing at the moment to bring the subject up again at council or to seek to change the council's position. But obviously I'm not privy to considerations within the other political groups. I'd be rather surprised if it was their highest priority at this moment in time to change a position which they know is supported by the majority of the people of Southampton. However, I think you should use a belt and braces approach to ensure that if at any point between now and the time the council receives powers to act in this matter, there is a proposal to once again alter the council's position, that is considered by members, all of whom, including the new members, have been thoroughly briefed and have had every opportunity to grasp the real issues.